The rebellious period in a teenager's life is always a challenging stage when it's easy to make mistakes that one will later regret. Youthful maximalism can lead to tragic consequences because, in trying to break free from parental control, it's easy to fall into the clutches of a real monster. Today's story unfolded in the small town of New Partridge, Florida, USA. It's a typical American suburban community with a population of about 15,000 people. Located near Tampa, in a region with well-developed beach infrastructure, New Partridge is usually a quiet resort town with low crime rates where people feel safe. Even if some offenses do occur here, they are mostly minor and non-violent. But the events that took place in 2002 shocked the entire community. In the early 2000s, the Ashbrook family lived in New Partridge, Tara and Robert, with their 2 daughters, the older of whom was named Jooshen. She was born on February 21, 1986, in the small Native American town of Kokomo, where her parents lived at the time. But due to job issues, to improve their financial situation, the family moved to New Partridge when Jooshen was just learning to walk and her little sister was a newborn. In the new town, Tara and Robert were able to find good jobs and get their life on track. Their relationship was good, and the parents strived to give their children everything they needed. Noticing that Jooshen loved music and dance, they decided to develop her talents. Robert was especially insistent on this. So the girl began attending music lessons and taking vocal classes. This turned into a real passion for the child, which the parents were happy to support. As an older sister, Jooshen shared her enthusiasm with the younger one, who naturally imitated her and wanted to be like her. The small age gap only contributed to the closeness between the girls. Although initially it was perceived as just a hobby in entertainment, Jooshen gradually began to develop her talent more and more actively. The parents, noticing her zeal, started taking their daughter to various events and competitions to help her advance in this direction. They hoped that the girl would be able to turn her passion into something more, which she worked hard for. This was happening at the dawn of the internet, and the young heroine understood perfectly that online activity could help break into the scene. Her idée fixe became a singer's career, which would bring pleasure and good money in adulthood. The girl immersed herself in this so much that it really seemed as if she was preparing for a music career. Thanks to her talent, she was very popular in her town, which only further motivated the schoolgirl. Regular performances at various events became her calling card. Even in elementary school, the girl began writing poems and song lyrics. She also met a group of young people who were also into music. During her studies, she even recorded several demo compositions of her own. For this, Jooshen visited a recording studio, not asking her parents for help, but using her own pocket money that she managed to save. After that, the young singer started visiting various organizations related to the music industry and radio, trying to promote her compositions. She hoped that they would interest someone and she would find a producer. But of course, it was extremely difficult to break through in this direction, so there was no wild success. In fact, Jooshen had several plans. The parents repeatedly discussed different situations and options with her to secure her future. The girl's most cherished dream remained a music career, but if that didn't happen, she was ready to build success in another field without giving up. She was attracted to law, so in parallel with music, Jooshen planned to get a higher education. According to her plan, the income from her musical activities should have contributed to this. By 2002, when Jooshen turned 16, she entered the teenage rebellious phase. She started having conflicts with her parents, mainly because of her music career. The girl spent more and more time studying at school, writing songs, visiting the recording studio, and hanging out with friends. This negatively affected her academic performance. She began to fall behind in class, and her parents couldn't do anything about it. Even worse was that she started attending parties with older guys, in a not-so-good crowd, which caused her parents' disapproval. It was there that Jooshen was introduced to alcohol and At the same time, her family did not observe any particular success in the music field. So they insisted that it was time for their daughter to move on to Plan B and focus on getting an education. The mother and father were very worried about the girl's behavior, constantly pressuring her, trying to set her on the right path. They persuaded her to finish school successfully, continue her studies, and engage in music only as a hobby. The parents feared that in such a situation, their daughter would not be able to enter college at all. And without a proper education, the path to the musical Olympus would be closed to her. All attempts to help the young rebel cope with teenage troubles only led to quarrels and misunderstandings. After one such incident, Jooshen ran away from home for the first time. And it almost immediately became a regular occurrence. The parents tried to take control of their daughter, keep her under house arrest, but to no avail. Almost every night she would run away from home, although she would return by morning or even a few hours later. At first, this caused even more irritation among the parents. But eventually, Tara and Robert realized that pressure would not achieve anything. They decided to temporarily loosen control to let the teenager calm down and try to establish contact with her. Jooshen continued to run away from home frequently, but her parents were no longer so worried. They understood that their daughter was simply trying to manipulate them and could not give in to such childish provocations. On July 30, 2002, the 16-year-old protagonist, as usual, left home late in the evening to hang out with her crowd. She returned home around 2 in the morning. All this time, the girl spent at a party with friends, once again ignoring the curfews set by her parents. The mother and father woke up, hearing their daughter return from another outing. Tara went downstairs and met her. The smell of alcohol and drugs from the girl was immediately apparent. The woman thought it was too much. She snapped, once again accusing her daughter of disobedience and improper behavior. She insisted that she break off all relations with the bad company that constantly dragged her into some mischief. Robert just watched it and simply went to bed. He had already seen such outbursts of aggression dozens of times, which invariably ended the same way. The man did not want to resort to physical force, spoil the relationship with his daughter and wife, so he decided to walk away from the conflict. Left alone with the teenager, the woman could not cope. Jooshen left the house again, slamming the door. Restraining her was futile. Having calmed down, the mother also went to bed, thinking that in the morning she and her daughter would make peace. But the next morning, waking up, the parents noticed that Jooshen was still not at home, which was completely unusual for her. Now Tara and Robert became alarmed in earnest. They called their daughter's cell phone, but it was turned off. Then the parents began calling all of Jooshen's friends and acquaintances whose numbers they had. Despite the behavioral problems, the mother knew the phone numbers of all the teenagers with whom her daughter could stay overnight. But it turned out that she had not shown up at any of them that night. Then Tara decided to walk around all the places where Jooshen could also be when she ran away from home. Unfortunately, nowhere could they find either the girl herself or any traces of her nighttime whereabouts. The mother finally panicked, and the head of the family went to the nearest police station to report his daughter missing. Unfortunately, the local authorities of this small town knew Jooshen well. The girl had appeared in numerous similar statements when she ran away from home. Therefore, her parents' appeal was not given much attention at first. The police simply tried to calm the worried mother and father and send them home to wait for the return of their disobedient child, and not distract law enforcement for nothing. After all, this had happened more than once, and the girl had always safely returned. Tara and Robert told the police station about the recent quarrel, as well as that their daughter had not shown up at home in the morning, which was unusual for her. Moreover, none of her friends knew where she might be. All this was different from previous cases of escape, but it only confirmed the police in their opinion. They stated that the schoolgirl just needed to cool down after the quarrel, and she would definitely return, but later, when she thinks it over. According to the rules, at least 24 hours had to pass from the moment of disappearance to officially announce a search. So Tara and Robert had to return home hoping that Jooshen would be waiting for them there. Of course, this did not happen. In any case, the parents had to wait a day, but they did not waste time. Together with their younger daughter, they walked around the whole town in search of Jooshen, but to no avail. The next morning, an electrician was walking to work past the Shady Hills Road forest. It was usually quiet and peaceful here. The man often walked along this stretch of road and had never noticed anything unusual before. But this time, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed something suspicious. The electrician decided to take a closer look. The closer he got, the more this object resembled the outlines of a human body, which was even more frightening. And when the man realized that it was indeed a mutilated corpse of a teenager, he rushed to call the police in horror. The law enforcement officers who arrived at the scene confirmed that the body belonged to a girl of 16 to 18 years old. It was immediately decided to check all the missing person reports that had been received in recent days. It became obvious that it was about Jooshen, as the victim fully matched the description. Although the photograph provided by the parents was of little help due to the girl's disfigured face. To conduct an official identification, it was necessary to call close relatives. But the authorities decided not to rush so as not to traumatize the family once again. The girl's body was thrown in the middle of the forest, with clothes lying nearby. There was a deep cut on her neck, as well as many other wounds all over her body. The corpse was immediately sent for autopsy to a forensic expert. At first, the detectives assumed a sexual motive for the attack because of the torn clothes. However, the forensic examination did not reveal any signs of rape. Interestingly, death was not caused by the deep cut on the neck. The girl died because the killer literally crushed her larynx, breaking her neck. And the cut was made after death. The victim had broken collarbones, and her entire upper chest was covered in bruises. Numerous signs of struggle were found, injuries on her arms and upper body. Obviously, the girl had desperately resisted the attacker for a long time until she was exhausted and gave up. The nature of the injuries clearly indicated intentional murder, because it was simply impossible to accidentally inflict such injuries. Jooshen's fierce struggle for her own life immediately gave the police valuable evidence. Under the victim's nails, forensic experts found skin particles and several hairs with the criminal's skin. During a thorough analysis of the materials collected on the body, it turned out that the girl was not killed in this alley. Most likely, she was brought here and thrown out to hide the traces or confuse the investigation. In the forest, they managed to find tire tread marks. At first glance, this might seem like an ordinary find. But these tracks could only have been left here at about the time the body was being transported, as it was raining then. Due to the fact that it was a sparsely populated area, the tread marks were clearly imprinted on the wet ground. This made it possible to obtain a high-quality cast. In addition, soil particles were collected from the roadside ditches for a more detailed analysis of where the body could have been brought from. As soon as the experts were finally sure that the discovered body belonged to Jooshen, her parents were informed of the tragic news. Both arrived at the identification, which was a devastating blow to the mother and father. Already during the first conversation with the police, Tara reported that their neighbor, John Henson, should be checked. Many attributed violent actions against children to this 60-year-old man. The woman recalled that he had harassed the schoolgirl. There were rumors about some unpleasant incident involving the police, but Tara could not say anything specific. Having arrived at the specified address, the law enforcement officers found only Mr. Henson's wife. She said that a few months before this event, her husband had moved out. He lived far away, the couple was going to divorce. According to the woman, at the time of the attack, John was not in the city, so his presence here was excluded. In addition, the police check did not reveal any documented facts of violence on Henson's part. And in general, contrary to Tara's words, he had no criminal history. The man turned out to be clean before the law, so he was immediately excluded from the circle of suspects. In the absence of other versions, the detectives focused on studying the evidence already collected. The tread marks and skin particles and hair of the alleged criminal were of the greatest interest. The tire tracks were subjected to a comprehensive analysis. It was found that tires of 7 brands had a similar pattern, and not very common ones. This allowed to significantly narrow down the search area. In addition, by the depth of the imprints, it was determined that it was not a passenger car or a truck, but something in between, for example, a large pickup truck or van. Meanwhile, a woman came to the police station and reported that she had seen Jooshen on the morning of July 31st. This meeting took place approximately a few hours after the girl's last escape from home, which made it possible to clarify the time frame. The witness said that early in the morning she received a call from a girl who introduced herself as Jooshen and asked to speak to her son. But the young man was not in the city, so the stranger asked if the woman could give him a letter. The mother agreed to act as an intermediary. Around 9 a.m., the girl did arrive at the witness's house and handed over an envelope. According to the woman, Jooshen got out of a red pickup truck driven by a man in his 40s with short hair. During the transfer of the letter, nothing suspicious was noticed, except that the teenager was clearly in a hurry. The woman did not get a good look at the driver's face, so she could only provide an approximate description. Be that as it may, the police had no other information. The witness gave the detectives not only the letter, but also the phone number from which the girl had called. It all seemed interesting, as the car matched the evidence found. There was nothing special in the note, Jooshen was simply informing the guy about breaking up with him. But the phone number turned out to be much more interesting. The detectives immediately dialed it, and the call was answered by a man who identified himself as Philip Partin. According to him, on the morning of July 31st, he was returning home with his daughter and saw a girl on the road who was hitchhiking. Philip stopped and agreed to give her a ride. It was Jooshen. She asked to use his mobile phone to call some woman. Then she asked to take her to this person's house to give an envelope to her friend. Philip did not refuse. On the way, they stopped by a supermarket, and then the girl went somewhere in an unknown direction. After talking to Partin, the police asked him to come to the station to officially record his testimony. The man agreed, but he did not show up, neither the same evening or the next day. The detectives regarded this as a bad sign. They tried to contact Philip again, but to no avail, the number was turned off. This only increased the suspicion against him. Then the law enforcement officers decided to check in whose name this phone number was registered. It turned out that Philip Partin was not just a good Samaritan who gave rides to hitchhikers, but an officially recognized criminal. In addition to numerous minor offenses, over the years of his life, he had managed to commit one murder and was also suspected of another, of a girl of easy virtue. The last episode happened just a few years ago, when Philip turned 37. Moreover, he had previously been accused of murder. When mathematics teacher Harry Thorne was found strangled and without clothes in his own home, all the evidence pointed to Philip. The man fled, but in 1989 he was tracked down. During searches of the suspect, items that had disappeared from the murdered teacher's home were indeed found. This made it possible to link him to the brutal reprisal. And although Partin never confessed to the crime, the court sentenced him to 17 years in prison. After Philip's imprisonment, his lawyers did not stop fighting for their client's freedom. In the end, focusing on the numerous mistakes made by the judge, the defenders managed to get a review of the case. The retrial mitigated the sentence to 6 years in prison. However, Partin was released even earlier. Later, the man got a job as a developer in construction, where he met Martha. The woman was raising her daughter alone, and soon the couple had a daughter together, Poja. Years later, Philip and Martha's relationship reached an impasse, the exact reasons for which are not reported. After the divorce, a fierce struggle for custody of the younger girl unfolded. Somehow, despite his criminal past and extremely disturbing life upheavals, Partin managed to win the right to full care of the child. As of 2002, he continued to live with her. Now this officially recognized criminal was connected to the murdered girl. It seems that he was the last person to see her alive. The detectives understood that they had most likely missed Jooshen's killer. They kept calling Philip, but he never answered. Then the investigators decided to check the supermarket, which, according to the suspect, he and Jooshen had visited together. The cops obtained the surveillance camera footage and started analyzing the frames. It turned out that the man and the girl were indeed here on the day of her disappearance. On July 31st, Philip stopped in a shopping center parking lot together with Jooshen and his own daughter. They went into the store, bought something, and then drove away. After that, the girl delivered a letter to her ex-boyfriend's mother. Apparently, somewhere around this time, some incident occurred that led to the attack on the teenager and her murder. Unfortunately, at that time there were too few surveillance cameras on the streets, so it was not possible to track the suspect's further movements. Partin was put on the wanted list, which, given the considerable media coverage, became one of the most high-profile in the USA. Hundreds of testimonies were received from people who were either sincerely mistaken or simply seeking fame. Processing them took a lot of time. However, among this stream, truly valuable information sometimes slipped through. For example, it was possible to find out Philip's address thanks to his friend's appeal. He said that for several months, including after the murder, he shared a house with the wanted man and his daughter. It is noteworthy that at the time the friend visited the police station, the 6-year-old girl was no longer with Partin, which looked extremely alarming. By the time Philip's friend came to the police, he had already moved out of the apartment. The man had no idea where his buddy had gone. Fortunately, this information allowed tracking at least the fugitive's previous place of residence and obtaining valuable clues. The apartment was thoroughly searched. A small bedside table with bleach stains was found there, as well as microscopic drops of blood. The examination confirmed that they belonged to the deceased Jooshen. In addition, the red pickup truck that the police were looking for was registered to Philip. From now on, Partin was officially considered the main suspect in the murder. Apart from the fact that the criminal had escaped, the police realized that a 6-year-old girl, whom even a neighbor had not seen, was in his hands. The fate of the little one remained unknown. Law enforcement feared that the child might be in danger or that the killer would use his daughter as a hostage during the arrest. The next day, a woman named Martha came to the police station. She said that she saw an announcement about the search for Philip on the news. According to her confession, he was her ex-husband. Martha had seen him a few days before Jooshen's disappearance when she picked up her daughter. Partin behaved not very welcomingly, as usual. But unexpectedly, after the girl's disappearance, he brought their daughter to her mother early in the morning. Thus, the worst fears about the girl's fate did not come true, she was safe with her mom. Moreover, the detectives had the opportunity to talk to an extremely valuable witness who had seen Jooshen alive. The investigators questioned Philip's daughter. The girl recalled how she really returned with her father at night from some trip. She was dozing in the car, but suddenly noticed that her dad stopped and took an unfamiliar girl into the cabin. She introduced herself as Jooshen, started talking with Philip, and said that she had run away from her parents to travel by hitchhiking. She wanted to get to Los Angeles, show her songs there, and become famous as a singer. Later, the fellow traveler asked for a phone to call someone, then they stopped by a store and some house. After that, they went to the river, where they swam and fished. The child fell asleep, and when Partin's daughter woke up, Jooshen was no longer in the car. The father did not answer the question of where the stranger had gone, but simply took the little one to her mother. This seemed extremely strange, because usually Philip avoided contact with his ex-wife and reluctantly gave his daughter even for short visits. All these details only increased the suspicion against him. After the police talked to the criminal's daughter, he himself called the police station. Philip openly mocked law enforcement, calling each time from different locations. As soon as the cops calculated his whereabouts and came to arrest him, the suspect was no longer there. After a few such incidents, calls from him stopped altogether. Moreover, Partin went to ground thoroughly, for many months. The police had no idea where he was hiding. It seemed as if the criminal had vanished into thin air, no calls or payments on his accounts. Partin was hiding so skillfully that at some point the investigators suggested that he was no longer in the country. But suddenly, almost a year later, during a routine check of a suspicious car, one of the patrolmen came across a vehicle that resembled Philip's wanted pickup truck. It seems that the guardians of order finally got on the trail. However, it turned out that someone else was already using this pickup. It was Partin's friend, who tipped off the police about the fugitive. It was found out that all this time the suspect had been living with a roommate, had no official registration, and therefore remained unnoticed. Philip was finally tracked down, although they had to act with extreme caution so that he would not escape again. The criminal was hiding in Fayetteville, North Carolina. When the suspect was finally detained on October 28, 2003, the first thing they did was take hair samples from him. They were compared with the hair found under Jooshen's nails. They matched. The tread pattern of his pickup truck tires also matched the tracks found at the crime scene. Despite all the evidence against him, Partin simply refused to talk to the police and did not admit his guilt in the murder of the teenager. According to the reconstruction of events that the prosecution presented to the jury at the trial, after running away from home, Jooshen got into the car of a stranger. Since he had a little girl with him, she trusted the man. He gave her a phone, went to the store with her, helped deliver the letter. Partin did everything to gain Jooshen's trust even more. And then, when his daughter fell asleep, he took the opportunity to attack the passenger, probably intending to rape her. But the girl put up a desperate resistance, so the rapist's intentions did not come true. Enraged, he killed Jooshen and took the body to the apartment where he lived at the time. After that, his daughter woke up, and Philip took her to her mother. Then the criminal returned to get rid of the corpse. He cleaned up the crime scene and took Jooshen's body to a remote corner of the forest in Florida. During the trial, the accused's behavior towards Tara and Robert, the parents of the murdered girl, was the most shocking. Every time the woman accidentally looked at him, the criminal would begin to smile and wink. It seemed that he did not feel any emotions or remorse about what happened. The man did not plead guilty, but there was more than enough evidence against him. The jury found Philip Partin guilty of first-degree intentional murder. On December 1, 2008, by a vote of 9-3, he was sentenced to death. The death penalty is still provided for in the state of Florida. After the verdict was announced, while the convict was in the death row cell, his lawyers began the appeal process. In the end, Partin managed to save his life. In 2024, the death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment without the right to parole. Please write your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. For those who are new here, subscribing is the best way to stay updated on future content. Also give a like please. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you for your support during this difficult time. Until next time, friends.